Shots fired! Shots fired! 124 South Sycamore Street! That's 124 South Sycamore Street! Officer down! Officer down! Roger that. 124 South Sycamore. Sending back up.
374.
I am a former San Francisco police officer and a former federal police officer for the United States government. I've won many awards, have won many captain accommodations for outstanding police work in patrol and outstanding police work in undercover narcotics work and undercover details. I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, I've had knives pulled out on me, I've been shot at numerous times, I've been in car chases, seen shootings, seen stabbings, seen overdoses, seen many homicides, and I was even involved in an on-duty shooting where I discharged my firearm and was ultimately cleared of a justified shooting. Even one day when I was working an undercover operation detail that I was almost nearly shot by one of the department's own members. I've been to the deepest and darkest parts of San Francisco that you would never want to see and never want to go. I literally gave my blood, sweat, and tears to the police department. And in the end, when they decided that they no longer needed me, had no longer use for me, they fucked me. There was so much corruption in the police department that they ultimately set me up. Lied. There was accusations even coming from the chief himself. My attorney at the time had never seen anything like this. Ultimately, the department won in setting me up, and I lost my job. They terminated me. And that ended my career with the San Francisco Police Department. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I had both my parents. My father worked. My mom was a stay-home mom. I'm the oldest of two, and nonetheless, my mom had her work cut out for her. My father was a hard-working man. He provided for the family. My dad was big into the outdoors, whereas my mom was more of the indoor person. Yeah, my dad loved the outdoors. He loved fishing, camping, and hunting, and all of which he would take us to do on a frequent basis. My dad had different goals for me. He wanted me to be a professional athlete. He taught me the game very well enough to the point where every year I won Most Valuable Player. And it wasn't up until almost my final year of playing that I won MVP of California. I even got a personalized, hand-signed letter from the senator himself. But that was my dad's dreams. That's what he aspired for me to do. Mine was quite different. My mom came from a large family. There's 4 sisters, 4 brothers. She pretty much kept an open door to the house, and at any given point, a relative could come and stay with us. I had uncles come live with us, my aunts came lived with us, cousins came and lived with us. As far back as I can remember, there was always somebody living with us, and I don't even think there's a time that I can recall that we didn't have anyone living with us. One of my uncles on my mom's side came to live with us, and he stayed with us from time to time when he was in and out of prison. He did time in Folsom, he did time in San Quentin, and he did time in Soledad. He was a robber, he was a stick-up man, he rolled with the Mexican mafia, and he had a bit of a drug addiction to heroin. He was always into something. He was always hustling. He was always either hustling for money or trying to get his next fix on heroin. But nonetheless, he was a great uncle. He was still a family man, despite his choice of career, if you want to call it that. But he was a great guy. I remember one day in particular, he asked me if I could wash his car. And he said he would give me a few bucks when I was done. I was excited because I was a little kid. I was only like 13 years old. And, would have been nice to have a few dollars. So I washed his car. Once I was done, I was excited. I ran into the house, told him to come check out his car, that I washed it, cleaned it, shined the wheels. And once I was done, he reached into a suitcase, and instead of handing me money, he handed me a big Ziploc baggie of marijuana. And that was my first introduction into narcotics. Well, time went on, and my uncle was still in and out of jail, still in and out of doing robberies. And it was one particular morning, 5 a.m. in the morning to be exact, my mom gets a phone call from his girlfriend at the time that my uncle was shot and killed in a robbery. Some time had passed after my uncle passed away, and his son came to live with us, my cousin. He too was in a gang, in and out of jail, and smoked a lot of PCP at the time. But I got along great with him. We hung out all the time. He had a little job downtown, a little janitorial job. He cleaned a little club, a little spa type club, and I used to pick him up all the time. I used to pick him up every Sunday. It was like clockwork. I'd go down and meet him, pick him up. We'd either go get something to eat after or hang out, and he'd come back to the house because he lived with us. Well, one particular Sunday, I was a little lazy, and I didn't feel like going down to pick him up. And he knew that if I wasn't there at the time he got off work, that I wasn't coming, and he'd find his own means home, or he'd go hang out with friends. Well, this one particular Sunday, I didn't go. The next morning, I wake up to a phone call from a friend who was a member at this local fitness club. And he said that they found my cousin dead at the bottom of a swimming pool. And that was, needless to say, that was sort of a devastating moment again. But I've always felt sort of guilty that what if I would have went and picked him up on that particular Sunday? This could have been avoided or could have not happened. Who will know? But the police department didn't really investigate it. They spoke to family members and friends, and because he was a gang member and because he was in and out of jail and he dabbled in narcotics, in those times, it just went nowhere. The investigation went nowhere, and they just chalked it up to a death, an accidental death. Shortly after my cousin's passing, His brother, my other cousin, was set up in a robbery gone bad. My cousin was set up, he was robbed, and they shot him in the head. Just when you think things couldn't get worse, my cousin, on my dad's side of the family, he was a big cocaine dealer on the West Coast. He was actually one of the largest cocaine dealers on the West Coast. He was always driving around in a fancy car, Lamborghini or Ferrari. He had one for every day of the week. He had a lot of money. He made a lot of money. He was involved and had connections all over. Well, once again, the call comes through that my cousin was killed in an ambush. And that was another devastating blow to the family. And there was just this whole cycle of violence at the time, gangs, narcotics, and it just took a toll on the family. Well, being exposed to the gangs and drugs early on, I kind of started to get in a little trouble myself. I was about 14 years old. I joined the gang. Actually, me and one of my other cousins, we joined the gang together. And it was just sort of the thing to do. It was just sort of what I was exposed to and just seemed sort of natural. But there was an issue, apparently, with my cousin and another female of the gang. And the gang members didn't like it, so they kicked my cousin out. Now, not knowing this, I didn't know what had happened. So one day I'm at school and I get attacked by the own members of the gang I belong to. They try to slice me with a razor blade. They cut up the back of my jacket. They cut up my backpack that I was carrying. They even sliced it so hard that it went all the way through my jacket, the backpack, and cut my school books. School liaisons got involved because students had seen what happened. They reported it, they approached me, and it was a big thing. Nonetheless, because of the connections I was involved in and had through family members of gang connectivity, it was handled. It was handled, and I moved on. So after things sort of settled down with the deaths in the family, you just sort of reflect and look back and think about things and try to do things differently and want a different life to live. But I guess you become a product of your environment, and I sort of started going down the wrong path. I started drinking a lot, hanging out with the wrong people. And then I was about 19 years old, just turning 20, and I got caught up one night in a burglary. Got arrested, spent a little time in jail, and they couldn't find enough evidence to completely pin the burglary on us. But they gave us the ultimatum that, based on the evidence that they did have, if we went to trial and lost, we're looking at 4 to 6 years, or we can take a plea deal now on a misdemeanor trespassing charge, serve community service time, and go on probation, and that'll be that. So it was a no-brainer, and I took the plea deal. Well, I thought because of the arrest and the nature of it, that was gonna sort of end my pursuit and career in law enforcement. But as I looked up the criteria, it wasn't gonna affect me at all. And so I was lucky in that aspect that that decision to take the plea deal wasn't gonna affect me of becoming a police officer, or so I thought. But I was introduced to the game long before the police department. I was introduced to gangs, narcotics, and criminal activity, even jail. So by the time I made it into the police department and they approached me with undercover work, it was easy. It was easy to walk the walk and talk the talk because I did it. I lived that lifestyle before, and this was going to be easy. This was going to be a piece of cake. The department had no idea where I've come from, but they were about to find out.